All right, we're back, and this is part 2 of 3 in this presentation. In behalf of Joshua Generation, this is Mel Keys, and I'm excited to share with you the remainder. Take some notes, because some of the information may be new, and if it's not, just get ready, because there's more to come. It's going to be a blessing with your name on it. Let's start with this. Some of you are familiar with the cash flow quadrant put together by Mr. Robert Kiyosaki some years back, but still phenomenal information that needs to be reiterated over and over again. It shared with us that there are several pathways to wealth that we tend to take, at least 4 different ways for wealth creation. Some work a whole lot better than others. Sad to say, it's tragic, in fact, that the majority of us, we don't even know that there are different alternatives. All we've done is all we've done. All we know is all we've known. And that's what was passed on to us. On the left side of the quadrant, section E and section S, E stands for employed, S stands for self-employed. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but you'll notice that that's 5% of the wealth makeup on the left side of this quadrant, and 95% of the population is there. What's strange is you have the least amount of money and the most amount of people. Isn't that something? It's crowded in that space. So you're talking about a space that's definitely overcrowded and definitely underfunded. That's a bad recipe. Say it again. Definitely overcrowded and definitely underfunded. You're talking about 5% of the wealth and 95% of the population. What's the difference between the E and the S? E for employee. That's the majority of people working for someone else, which is honorable, and there's nothing wrong with it. But you don't want to be limited to that. And you definitely don't want to have an entire career and end there, especially when you're a person of faith and we serve an unlimited God who gives us capacity and gives us teaching that says that he's called us to be the head and not the tail. But so many times our whole lives contradict the very calling and the very gifts that are ours, simply by being diligent and seeking to do what it is that he gives us the potential for. Very few even rise to our potential. We stay stuck. We stay, I'll use the word incarcerated. Incarcerated in a space, in a world created by other persons who, on the real of it, they're on the other side of the equation. They're on the far right. They're the B's and the I's, but they've created a world for the employees to live in, and we get the crumbs. The employees get the crumbs. And I know some of you, your lifestyle is this, that, or the other, but what happens when that employment runs out? When it changes, when it ships overseas, or when they make changes and you never got the memo, and you come in and your office is locked, and the door even looks different. There's someone else in your office. Guess what? It's not your office anymore, because the person on the B side or the I side, far right, they made a decision that really didn't have to go through you. You were there at their pleasure. You were there for their purpose. Now you got something for it. You got something from it. There was some mutual exchange, but the greatest and the lion's share of the benefit, believe me on this now, it was not yours. You're the employee. Very much, sad to say, disposable. People die for their jobs, and many of them die on their jobs. And guess what? The following week, there's someone new in there. In some cases, it doesn't even take a week. You're replaced quickly. And that's not to say not to work hard. I believe that we should work hard. When you're working for someone else, you should exercise due diligence and do your best. I'm just saying, perhaps you should get it in your heart and soul now that you don't want to end there. And that's not all you should do. You should have something that you own yourself, something with your last name connected to it and on it, something that you're building that you can pass on to you can't pass on that job to your kids. You just can't. Number one, they don't want it. Number two, they may or may not be qualified, or they may be overqualified. It's not something for them to inherit. Now, if it was a business, that would be different. But the job, the employment, can't do it. It won't be done. So employment is very limited in that extent. You're either on a salary or in many cases an hourly wage, which the reality is, when you really look at it, if you're making $25, $30 an hour, middle class income, that type of thing, seems to be something substantial to others. But the reality is, those that you work for, they're paying you $25, $35, $40 an hour. That means they're earning $150 or more dollars an hour on what it is that they're paying you the 25, 30, or 40 on. So they're always getting the lion's share at your expense, at your disposal. They're using you to reach their goals. Now, there's mutual benefit. I'm not saying quit your day job. I'm not saying that it's not work, but you don't want to end there, and you want to always explore your other options. So many people, after they've labored and learned, they then take their employment and they create self-employment. They say to themselves, I can do this myself. I can do it even better. In fact, I'm starting. So they launch out and they start their own business. And shout out to all the self-employed business persons out there, because that's what it takes. It takes going for it. It takes faith. It takes discipline and hard work and vision and all of those things. And it's well worth it. In most cases, you're going to make more money. You'll be able to leave something for your family, for your loved ones with your last name on it. They can inherit it. You have all kind of tax deductions and things that you can use as well. You're employing other people. The problem is people, because many of the people that you employ, they're not nearly going to be as dedicated as you are to the vision. You're the visionary. They're not. That means they're going to take more time off. They're going to want more time off than what you would want them to have. And guess who wins? And when they're not there, who has to pick up the slack? Who has to work a double shift or even a triple shift? Who has to do all the things that someone else didn't show up to do? You, because it's your vision and it's your pace of employment. It's your dream. Sometimes it becomes their nightmare. It all depends on the type of leader you are and what type of business it is. But the reality is your dream and not theirs. So that means you carry the burden and the blessing of it. And many times it may be just you or a few other persons. And that means that you're working, you're making more money in a lot of cases, but you're also putting in more time. So even though you have more money, when are you going to use it? When are you going to enjoy it? And sometimes that day never comes, because you can literally wear yourself out, where the whole system is relying upon you. That's the self-employed person, mom and pop shop, the operation, family business. Is just a handful of persons making it all happen, if not just one person. Self-employed. Many benefits greater than just being employed by someone else, but nonetheless it's still very limited, especially as it relates to the time factor. So that's the left side of the quadrant, where you have the E for employee or employed and the S for self-employed. Now let's go to the promised land. Let's go to the other side of the tracks, the other side of the equator, where we have where we have the B for big business and the I for the investor. Now you notice, in contrast, on the left side, that was 5% of the wealth and 95% of the population. Again, you're talking about overcrowded and underfunded. But take a good look-see at the comparison and the contrast in the B and the I sectors of the quadrant. Well, you'll notice that that's 95% of the wealth. Well, we found the missing money, that's for sure. 5% on the left, but 95% on the right. Let's get right. And then on the right side, 5% of the population as opposed to 95% of the population. It doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people over here. And you know why? Because it's not. It's a very small core group where 5% of the population literally owns and controls 95% of the wealth. It's incredible. Well, how do they do it? Are they that much smarter? Are they that much more organized or gifted? Do they work that much harder? I'll tell you this, not at all. It's a different system. It's a different mindset. It's a different world. Wealth building comes from big business, and many of those businesses are household names or brands that you and I are, definitely mindful of, we're aware of. We shop and frequent and patronize their place of business and vision all the time. But here's what they've done. They've created a business system where their income and their wealth is no longer just created from the work of their own hands. They've learned to create a system that they're able to leverage the gifting, the talents, the skill sets, and the experience, and yes, the time of other persons, and use that for their own business purposes. So they may have employees of, hundreds or thousands or even more, but when they leverage that, they're creating something that truly is wealth building altogether. So without calling any names of any particular corporations and things of that sort, those are definitely wealth building. Franchises, things of that sort. But I'm going to share with you today another system of wealth building, because a lot of those types of corporations, it took hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars just to get started. Even on a franchise, it might be a small sandwich shop, but just to start that thing up, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Many people get second mortgages, all kind of loans and things of that sort, or they pull out all that money from their retirements and investments. But it takes so much money. Even if you're going to start a lemonade stand, it's going to take something. So it takes so much money. But we're going to show you a way how you can get the same result with a different system, but you're not going to nearly have to go into your pocket for nearly as much. So we're going to share that with you in just a moment. So the wealth building system that we're going to show you has a contrast to it, but nevertheless, it is big business. We're talking about big business in the realm of billions of dollars, multi-billion dollar industry. We're going to show you that. In fact, we're going to show you how it ties into a trillion, in fact, $2 trillion industries that are connected inside of this. But that's the B, that's the big business. Then the I is the investor. See, when you've operated a big business successfully, you don't want to just stay there. You want to take your wealth and transfer it into the I quadrant, where your money makes more money than you can, and where any of your businesses can. See, businesses create wealth, but nothing creates wealth like wealth. Everything reproduces after its kind. And when you have sufficient wealth to make more money with the money you have, there's no replacement of that. Because now you're free with the time to do with your time as you will, while your money goes out and goes to work for you. And your money can work much harder and much faster than you can when it's invested in the right places. So that's what the investor is all about. And on that side, that right side again, we got to get to that right. Again, we're not saying that it starts overnight. We're not saying that it's a miraculous formula, but it takes development of the mindset, and it takes time to get there. But more than anything else, you got to understand it is a system. It is a way of thinking. It's a mindset and a philosophy, inner core convictions that really set the difference. Does not mean that the person's on the right or any smarter. Does not mean that the person's on the right or any more gifted or any more dedicated. It just means they're using a different system to create their wealth. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. Let me share with you another slide. And in this particular slide, hopefully it'll make sense. Because a lot of people talk about this. Oh, the pyramids. We don't... let's make this plain and let's make it clear, hopefully for one last time here. Everything around us has some form of a pyramid, if you will. If you need to use that word, we don't use it because legally speaking, pyramids are illegal, and there's nothing that we do as a company that is anything close to illegal. We don't believe in any illegal or unethical practices. We are, just literally, transparent, full disclosure, and all of those types of things for any business that would need to disclose. But nonetheless, if you look at traditional corporate America, whatever that entity of business would be, at the top, you have so few persons. I'm talking about CEO, CFO, COO, all those, the most important persons who got that thing started. Now, they're the ones who are also getting the biggest benefits. Depending upon the organization, we have organizations where the salaries are in the millions or tens of millions. The bonuses themselves can be in the millions or tens of millions. But that's only for the ones at the top. Certainly not to be expected for the ones down below, not even by the senior management or the mid-management. Now, they might have great, salary or even hourly wages and things of that sort, depending. But the thing of it is nowhere near like the ones at the top. And it would take sometimes a miracle for them to get to the top because there's no room at the top. They are forbidden they're forbidden to get to the top because they're locked out, because the ones at the top do not want to be replaced until they're long gone from the scene. And sometimes they're just passed over to a son or daughter or whoever they choose. But here's the reality. Look at the bottom. That's the base. That's where the majority of the people are. So at the top, you may have, a dozen or so. Somewhere in the middle, you may have dozens, hundreds, or depending on the organization, thousands. But at the bottom, the employees, and that is on the bottom for a reason, you have literally the bulk of the persons compared to the top, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of persons who will never have the opportunity to go up to where the top is. So that's just how it is. That's corporate America 101. It works best for those at the top. For those at the bottom trying to get to the top, it can take a lifetime, if ever. Lastly, I like to show you a contrast to this, and that is a better life requires a better way. When you can be the CEO of you, and you can connect yourself with like-minded individuals who want the same thing that you want, to be the CEO of themselves. You are not their boss. They don't work for you. You work together. Teamwork makes the dream work, and all of the tides rise when we all work together. We work together because we're making each other better. Iron sharpens iron. And when you get started, you're starting at the bottom, but you're going to build upward. That is, you're going to find a handful of like-minded individuals, your core group of individuals who think just like you think and want just like you want, and they're going to get in place and get in position, and they're going to duplicate and do the exact same thing that you did. As you're doing that, you're pouring yourself into them. Remember, they don't work for you. You didn't hire them. They are their own business persons, their own entities. They get their own tax deductions. They get their own benefits. In fact, they can pass you 100 times faster and go 100 times further than you. They're not limited to you in any kind of way. They're on their own path, but it's your role and your goal and your assignment to pour yourself into them, to be an example, to be a model, to answer questions, to solve problems, to make sure that they can get the resources for training so that they can become their best selves and do their best work in building their business and leaving a legacy. But when you pour yourself into them that way and they do the exact same thing, and they again duplicate again, and they in turn do it and duplicate again, by the time you look up, you have an organization of persons that you've not known any of them except through others. And those persons are now connected to you, and as a result, everybody is winning and growing together, because that's what this whole thing is about. A better life truly requires a better way. In contrast, I'll show you again the system. This is the flip side of it. That's traditional, modern, corporate America 101. And here's the new paradigm, the new shift, where we flip the script. And you are literally the one who is the CEO amidst other CEOs, who everyone has the assignment to win together. In the first equation, the ones at the top really and truly are the only ones who are really winning, because they can walk away and still get the benefits. They get more time, they get more benefit, they get more everything. Whether you get, well, you get more, right? Yeah, but it ain't what they're getting. But here, everybody has the opportunity to get the exact same thing. One person can get started today. Another person can get started 12 months later. The person 12 months later can catch the person that got started first. It matters not when you got started. What matters is that you get started. Because again, a better life requires a better way. I have one more session I'm going to share with you, and we're going to go into some information about travel and trade. It's going to blow your mind. Remember, we are Joshua Generation, and we are claiming God's promises together right here, right now.